I am Apostle Samuel Udu, the former General Overseer or Bishop of SPC from 1986 to 1995. I'm currently in Australia.
And what message? No?
And my message is all about resolving a disagreement. And we know all that there are disagreements in the family, disagreement in the community or a nation. We all know that in our world, there will always be disagreements. Disagreements are normal, and they are natural, they are cultural. And now my focus is on the disagreement that led to the conflict in South Sudan. As we all know, it started with the president and his former vice president. And we know that that disagreement, when a disagreement is not wisely resolved in the beginning, it may lead to a bitterness, and a bitterness to a conflict, and a conflict to destruction of lives and property. And that was what resulted in South Sudan. The ongoing conflict in South Sudan is a result of that. Now, how do we resolve a disagreement, or how do we resolve a conflict that has been caused as a result of the disagreement? The most important thing is to discuss, or in another way, find out the root cause of the conflict. The root conflict in South Sudan, for example, the root cause of the conflict, it all began with the president and his vice president, the former vice president. It was a very simple disagreement. For the president and his former vice president were friends. They ate together, they laughed together, they fought for the freedom of South Sudan, and they achieved it. Unfortunately, a simple disagreement like that sparked a conflict that spread like wildfire all over the country, and now we have a very serious problem. And now, how do we resolve such a conflict? There are three ways to resolve a conflict. The first one is to resolve it in African culture, the Western way of solving a problem, or in another way, in the Christian way. All the three are the possibilities that one of them may happen. Currently, it is the Western way of resolving a conflict. And the Western way of resolving a conflict is not according to the African culture. In the African culture, elders are involved, but in the Western culture, way of solving a political problem, it is the politicians who may not be elders of the communities in South Sudan. So we find that the community elders in South Sudan, which used to be the most important people to solve a conflict, were ignored or were left out, and now came in the IGAD, and IGAD does not understand the way how we in South Sudan solve our problems. We always solve our problems in a very simple way. We solve it in a cultural way, and I believe that if the conflict in South Sudan is resolved in a South Sudanese cultural way, it will be very easy. Yes, some people think the Christian way is also another way, but you know the Christianity also doesn't believe in a culture. You know, there are some of the cultures in African cultures which have been destroyed by the missionaries. The missionaries destroyed our culture. They didn't think that it was good, but they introduced the Christian way, which in another way was a Western way, a combination of Western way
and
the Western way, and now you see the confusion. This has become very difficult. The Sudan Council of Churches was involved in the current failed peace talks in Ethiopia, and that was because it was a combination of biblical and Western way of solving a problem.
Yes.
And some of them even said we should pray about it. In the African culture, we don't pray while solving a conflict.
And the Bible is from the African culture, is it?
Yes. So it is in our culture we have to to deal with the problem, we don't say, let us pray and think, leave it to God to solve the problem, because God will never send angels from heaven to solve a dispute. So, in my opinion, I believe very strongly that the problem in South Sudan can be solved by us, South Sudanese, in a cultural way, not in the Western way of doing things. In our African way of solving a problem, we don't use sanctions. We don't even understand sanctions. The word sanctions are not to be found in our culture. We have nothing to do with sanctions. Make things worse. Sanctions promote disagreement. Sanctions promote bitterness.
Hate
And it is inappropriate for Africans to use sanctions as a means of forcing people to disagree on what they do, on what they have disagreed. Sanctions is forcing people to accept what they have not accepted, what they have not agreed upon. So it is wrong to use sanctions according to the Western culture, but it is good to solve in an African way. The African way is open. Everything is open. People are free to express their views.
And that's the godly way.
It is even more than the biblical way.
Yeah.
The African way is way of solving a problem is very effective.
It's a godly way, the open way.
We should not try to import a foreign philosophy of solving a problem and install it in our minds. That is a very bad thing. Many educated people, because we're not always involved in talks, they think like they have adopted the Western philosophy of solving problems. In solving our problem, it is completely hard in an African way. This is why the conflict in South Sudan has existed for a long time. It is because it is like a doctor who is trying to force his patient to take a medicine without diagnosis, without diagnosing the real disease, without knowing the disease, and you force your patient to take a medication, which maybe the doctor thinks is better. It is good to find out the root cause of the problem, which in another way is the disease. If the doctor cannot identify the disease, he cannot treat a patient. So how can IGAD force through sanctions to the warring parties in South Sudan to accept a medicine or swallow an agreement which is a medicine? This is wrong, and I believe that we should come back to our roots. Come back to our culture.
Yes, even see the Bible from our culture.
Yes, we see everything, the Bible, in the African way of approach.
Yes,
and I believe that the African culture should be integrated into Christianity, into the Western.
Christianity is from the African Bible.
So this is very important. So this is all that I want to say, and thank you, and may Jehovah God bless you. And bless you again.
Just mention this: Christianity originated from the African culture. That's the thing. So anyway, thank you, and
you can audit it.
all right, thanks.